Hello YouTube and welcome to another video, and this video is going to be a Let's Get Technical video, and very similar to the couple of Miele strip downs that I've done. We're going to do one today on the Numatic Henry. Now there's quite a few videos on YouTube about how to strip down a pneumatic Henry. Not many of them talk about the major inherent problem which quite recent Henrys had. It concerns models built between 2009, I think it was, and 2013, 2014, which were called the HVR200A, which was it was the Autosave model, and that basically it had the feature where the machine would turn on always in low power, and you had to press a button on the back which was like a spring switch to turn it into high power. So it would always default basically when switching on to the low power setting, or that 600 watts. Now a lot of these Henrys have suffered breakdowns, and it basically concerns the Autosave board. It's like a circuit board inside, and what seems to be happening is this circuit board is failing, and then when you turn the cleaner on, and it's either the red light will come on and nothing will happen, or it's just completely dead. So basically these circuit boards are not, or haven't been, lasting the distance. And when you think how long Henrys of old used to last, they would last years and years and years, and most, a lot of them would carry on going until the carbon brushes burned out in the motor, or they suffered a breakdown in the cable. But unfortunately with the Autosave models, and I've seen quite a few of these on eBay, and also a couple at work where I work as a cleaner, we had some NSP 180As, and the last one that I was using failed with an Autosave failure. So we replaced it with a PSP 180, which is like a single speed 620 watt, I think it is, or it's something around that region. It's a blue one, basically without the turny rewind on the top. But essentially the 200A was not a very reliable machine, and that is exactly what this machine here is. It's a 200A, and we're going to basically take it all apart in the top, and I can show you where the Autosave board is. And they were at one time, I don't know whether they still are, but they were obtainable from Numatic or from parts websites basically. I think Buy Spares still sells them, eSpares, but you can buy these Autosave boards and you can get these working again basically. It hasn't failed because the motor, it's the board. In 99% of the cases of these failing, it'll be the circuit board. It doesn't apply to Henrys older than, I think it was 2009, don't swear on that. If it's not an HVR200A, then it won't be the Autosave board that's the issue. They do have circuit boards in earlier ones which were twin speed, but they're a different type of circuit board to what's in this. Okay. Now, depending on how quickly we go, we might have to do a part 2 on this video. I don't know. We'll just have to see how we go. But so many of these poor little guys have gone on eBay or on the scrap heap prematurely because of a circuit board failure. And in the old days, as I say, they were ultra reliable. I think with the new ones now that have come out that are just single speed, the biggest problem that I have with the single speed modern pneumatic, and I use it every single day when I'm at work doing the cleaning, is the floor heads and the pipe. Modern pneumatics are not built as well as they used to be, and we bought a new PSP 180 earlier on this was it this year? We had it earlier on this year, and already the hose cuff has split. The floor head wasn't any good for use on hard floors, and we had to swap it for a different one without the wheel on the back. We find that the filter inside the bag leaks a lot more dust, and the filter gets dirtier quicker than what the old one used to. It's also lighter in weight than what the old one was, and thinner plastic. So Numatic are cheapening these cleaners. They're not what they used to be. Maybe a lot of people might disagree with me there, but I do use these things on a regular basis, so we get to see how annoying they can be. Anyway, let's just put the camera down onto the workbench there. Angle it down so we can okay. So what we're going to do first is we're going to take the lid off. Right, so inside here we can see the usual stuff for a Henry. It's basically the Tritex filter here. On my cleaner now it is starting to get rather dirty because, as I say, that bag, I find the HEPA flow bags, they do let more dust through than what I would have originally liked. I do find they do let dust through and they do dirty the inside of the bucket. I mean, this one here doesn't get a massive amount of use, but nevertheless, I mean, it's a 2011, it's 6 years old now, and already, I mean, that is, the one at work is dirtier than this, and it's not even a year old. So, we'll put those to one side, and we'll start work on the head. Okay, so this is basically where we do all the work on this. This is the power head. It contains the motor, it contains the switches, it contains the circuit board, it contains everything that you need to work on, and we'll access everything from the bottom. So what we've got on the HVR200A is we've got 7 screws in the base, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. I can show you that on there. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, 7 screws. So I'm going to take all those screws out now with a power screwdriver. It is a Phillips head. So we'll start with these in the centre. Why won't that come out very easily? Let's just try with a normal screwdriver first. It could be that I've tightened these up with a normal screwdriver before and they're a little bit... They are very tight, these are, blimey. I'm sure they weren't this tight before. I had this to pieces before, you see. It takes a lot longer when you aren't using the power screwdriver. I think what I'll do is I'll just slacken them off first, and then we might be able to use the power screwdriver then. That one. That one, and we've got one more here. Okay, we should be able to use this now. I think it's this screwdriver's not what it used to be. It's not up to much cop anymore. I had another one of these. I had an Oxy version of Bosch one, and that gave up the ghost earlier this year as well with a failure on the button. They're not terribly long lasting, but then again I have had that for nearly 10 years, so I suppose nothing lasts forever. Right, now that we've undone all 7 of those screws, all we do, grab hold of it on the sides and simply lift it off like so, and basically that's the motor housing here, and you've got your switches here, these are the latches here. I'm not turning it upside down because all the screws will drop out. Basically, we'll just put this over here out of the way. So, what we've got here, okay, if we just take that down, this here is what we call the Autosave circuit board. Just having a quick pan round here, what we can see is there's the motor. There you can see the fan inside, and around the outside we have like I would call this, really it's more of a muffler than a proper exhaust filter. That's one thing that Henrys don't tend to have, and that is a user replaceable exhaust filter on them. Whereas modern cleaners nowadays, most of them have an exhaust filter that you can change or clean, and basically that filter would trap the carbon dust that the motor emits, or anything that gets through the pre-motor filter. The Numatic actually just uses this layer of foam, and I suppose it does absorb some carbon dust. We can see there it's a little bit black, but at the end of the day it's not a sealed system, this cleaner. No Henry ever has been a sealed system. They do emit carbon dust. And what my theory is for one of the reasons why that board has been failing is because the actual parts of the circuit board here are exposed to the exhaust air from the motor, because basically that is in the airflow from the exhaust of the motor, which is blown out through that channel there and comes out of the back of the cleaner here. Now what Numatic's idea was, I think, here was to actually provide some cooling for the components on the circuit board, because basically it's like a transistor by the looks of things, and that would obviously get warm in use. And rather than putting a heatsink on there, they're using the cooling air current from the motor to keep this cool. But what happens with extended use is that circuit board gets absolutely covered in carbon dust. And I think that what's happening, I mean I could be wrong on this, but I think that the actual carbon dust eventually builds up to such an extent on there that it actually causes shorting. And because carbon, I would have said, would be sort of a conductor of electricity, then this is causing a short out on the circuit board, and it's causing this particular item, and it's only a very simple little thing, but this here is what's causing the failure of most of these HVR200A machines. And basically they used to be about 30 quid, these did. I'm not sure what they are now, but you can, I'm sure you can still get these. So you could rescue a Henry if you had one that's in really good nick, but it had just stopped working. You didn't want to spend 110, 120 pounds on a new one, because obviously new Henrys now are only a low wattage. I mean they're okay, but if you wanted to keep your 1200 watt one going, all you need to do is replace that board. And then it's a simple case really, just turn it right, put the camera back on here. It's just a simple case really of, I wish I had a proper workbench to do here instead of this towel. Right, you basically take the connections off here. You take a photograph of it first to find out where the connections all went to, and then you'd basically just say you've got a white, brown, blue and black. So you'd unclamp them, one. Obviously I've got this on video now if I get confused. So you've got white, brown, blue and black. Essentially, there we go. So that is your Autosave board. And you order one of those online, get it to come, you take your 7 screws out, unclip it from here, clip the new one in as we're going to do. But first of all, what I'm going to do while I've got this out is I'm just going to just wipe it down, because obviously they do get covered in carbon dust, and if I regularly open my cleaner up and clean off the Autosave board, I'm just wondering if it might well prolong the life of the cleaner, because there's nothing on the rear side that would fail. It's all going to be on that side which is exposed to the exhaust from the motor. So there we go, that's the Autosave board. I'm going to just connect that back up now. So if you remember the way they went, we had the brown on the bottom, then we had the white on here, and then we had the I think the blue went there and the black went there. So that's it's as simple as that. You know, you've reassembled it now, and there we go. What we can do is we can just test it with the plug, unplug it, plug it in, just to see if it will come on. It won't now. I wonder if I've connected that wrongly. What I'll do, I will play the video back later on, and just make sure that I've got those connections on the right way. You got white, brown, unless I did connect it up the incorrect way. See, this is where you've got to be very careful, because it can be so easy to not remember the way you've done it. So I'll just unclip that, and when I've finished the video, I will play it back, and I will just have a look and make sure which way round they went. But for now, we will carry on just taking it apart a little bit further. So we can take our motor out very, very easily, and what we can see here, it's the old type of the twin fan 1200 watt motor. These are actually very, very reliable motors, very reliable. It's heavy, it's good quality. These just go on and on and on. I mean, we've got one green Henry at work. It's older than all the others, and it just keeps going on, because what they did, they bypassed this, so now it only works on one speed. It did fail, but one of our engineers had a go at taking this out of the circuit and just bypassed it, so that effectively you turn it on and it just comes on high all the time, and effectively that machine will carry on working until the carbon brushes go. I think, you know, they are a long-lasting motor, and it's just a shame that that was the Achilles heel. So we can just disconnect the terminals from the motor. There's one there and one here, and that's easy enough to remember. It doesn't really matter which way they go around. So one goes on here, and one goes on there, one on there. We take our motor out. So what we get left with now is that. From that point there, we can lift out the next part, like so, revealing. It's actually quite dusty in there, blimey. I mean, I haven't had this apart for quite some time, so there's a fair bit of carbon dust build up in there as well. Well, that's basically the motor housing in there, and that'll contain all the switches and the switch gear, so you can replace the switches from that point. There you've got your the slip rings, which are basically the contacts for the cord reel. Now there's a little bit of grease on there. You can re-grease that from time to time if it was getting squeaky and stiff, but normally they're fairly reliable, these reels. I'll just put that over to one side. Right, so what we've got here now is basically the hood of the cleaner, and we've got this is the cord reel basically. So there's our hood basically. There's nothing else left in there now, so we can put that to one side. And this is the cord reel. So if you're Henry, let's say that the cord was damaged and you wanted to replace the cord, it would be quite simple to do. So all you would do is you would undo these screws. You've got 1, 2, 3. So we'll just do that now. see if this power screwdriver will work for me. It's been on charge as well, this screwdriver has. It just doesn't seem to have much oomph in it anymore. Yeah, it doesn't. Right, so we'll take the 3 screws out. There we go. Turn it over. And then lift off the top, like so. And then what we've got, basically, is we've got our... There's our cord reel there. And in the middle we've got our 2 connections, and there's the interference suppressor, and there are the copper, I think they look like the contacts there, and basically those contacts there would make contact with these slip rings on here. Okay, so if you wanted to replace your cable, all you'd do is undo those 2 connecting screws there, lift off the old cable, wire your new one in, and hey presto, that's your cable done. Obviously I'm not going to do that on this because there's no need to, the cable's actually working okay. The only reason that it didn't work properly was because I think I've connected the autosave board up wrong, and that's my fault, that is, for not really making a note of how it went together. Okay, so we can just basically put this back on now. Just thinking now, does it actually go only one way round? I don't think it does, as long as you line the... That's just going to be the trickiest part. You've got to basically turn it round so you've lined the holes up. So we're going to have a part 2 on the video. We've got the strip down part, and we're going to have the reassembly part in part 2. We'll put that back on. 1. Dear me, this power screwdriver is really suffering. I'll just finish tightening up those with manual screwdriver. Okay, so that's essentially the cord reel. We'll put that out of the way. Now, in this part is basically our the only serviceable parts that are in here are going to be the switches themselves. Now, it's fairly easy to change the switches. They are actually enclosed in here, but what you've got to do is you've got to pop off this cover. So we just need to get a screwdriver behind here. And pop that off, like that side. And that side as well, like so. And that'll just come off. Okay, so there's our switch cover. And then now basically we can see the inside of the switches there. So if you wanted to replace your on and off switch, basically it just slides out. Well, that's the idea anyway. You might just need a screwdriver to help it out. Yeah, there we go. It's come out now like that. So you're just basically going to lift it out, and then you would unclamp your terminals from underneath, and that would enable you to replace your switch. That's just come off there, so we'll push that back on. Make sure that one's back on. So yeah, that's easy enough to do if you needed to replace your switches. And just going through here is the remainder of the wiring loom. That goes to the to the circuit board, that goes to the motor, and those are the slip ring contacts there that go to the power cord. So essentially that is all there is to it for the Henry. It's very, very easy to strip down to get to the parts you need to get to. Here's the motor. It's possible to replace the brushes fairly easily on these by, let's just check how much time I've got, 4 minutes left on this. You just unscrew, here's your brush holder. You've got 2 screws there, 1, 2, and as far as I can remember, we'd undo that screw, one. Let's take that out, because what's liable to happen is when I take this off and lift it, it's going to come out with spring-loaded pressure. So we can check our carbon brush length quite easily by doing this. There's the other screw. Lift off the clamp, and we should be able to just lift Is there any connections? Yes, there's one connection to a wire just on the back here, so we would need to just slip that off before we could get our brush holder out. That might be easier said than done. Yeah, they're a little bit tricky, to be honest, that is. It would have been easier if I'd have done that first before I take that out, but basically all you would do is grab hold of that wire from the back, pull that connector off, and then you'd be able to take out your brush holder, and we can just see there how much length there is on that carbon brush. There is an awful lot of length on there, you can see that. So it would take a long time for those brushes to wear out. But there we go. That is the that's the motor there, those are the brushes. I just want to see if I can get that mounted back in before I end the video. There we go, that just pushes back down in there. Yeah, I think what you'd need to do is get a little pair of pliers on that connection there, pull that off, and then you could take out your brush, lift it up and remove it. So we'll just put the holder back on the brush here. And I know you can buy these on eBay, carbon brushes for these, and from spare shops as well. But as I said earlier, what you would find is that the Autosave board would fail long before the carbon brushes on the motor would fail. And again, these motors are only found in the older Henrys, in the HVR200A. After 2014, when the new lower energy Henry came in with the EU regulations, they are not the same motor as this. So this is not applicable to anything newer than around 2014. Basically, after the HVR200A, the new version came out with the 580 watt or the 620 watt motor. It's different motors to this. So there we go. That's the Henry stripped down to the motor with all its component parts there that I've shown you. And in the next video I will endeavour to have a look at this playback now, find out the right way for the wires to go on that board, and we'll put it all back together again. So I'll see you in part 2.